With nearly all our indices putting in fresh all-time highs, I'll break the week down and then go over what to look for coming into Monday's session. And we'll start with the S&P 500. Just taking a look at this thing, it has only put in 3 red candles since March 25th. It's been on an absolute tear, putting in new all-time highs day in and day out. On a year to date, it's up about 13%, so the S&Ps are doing quite well so far in 2021. Now, when we take a look at the expected move, we are expecting 55 points this week. With the upper edge at 4,186, we came just 1 point shy of hitting that upper edge. Just take a look how it traded on the week. You can see Monday we started flat, we were negative. Tuesday we got going, however Wednesday we came back negative, and then it wasn't Thursday and Friday hitting that upper edge, and you can just see right there we're 1 point shy from that upper edge. So the options market did a great job in predicting the move for this week. Let's see what they expected for next week. So we go over to the trade tab and we take a look at 6 days out since it's Saturday. So right here, 51.85 is the expected move that they're pricing in. However, I screenshot it on Friday. It's about 55 point. So when we head on over to the chart and we draw these levels in, at 55 points of expected move next week, our upper edge is going to play 4,239. Call it 4240, with our lower edge being around 4,131. Call it 4130. 4130 was our midline last week, so it should play some very strong support. However, if we want to hit that upper edge, it's largely going to come down to what the Nasdaq wants to do. And when we take a look at the Nasdaq, it was up about 7 basis points on Friday, putting in a new all-time high. The Nasdaq on a year to date is up about 10.5%, so it's lagging the S&P ever so slightly. However, they're both putting in fresh all-time highs. Now, when we take a look at its expected move for next week, we can see this week we came just about 70 points shy, our upper edge at 14.1. We were efficient this week. Going into next week, we're expecting about 280 points. That upper edge is going to play around 14.3, you can see right there, with the lower edge at around 13.75, you can see right there. So momentum in the Nasdaq is going to lift the S&P higher. However, it's largely going to come down to what the bonds want to do. And when we take a look at these bonds, they were down 70 basis points on Friday. However, they're trying to get going. You can see some volume here on Thursday. However, you see that wick, we quickly got whacked back down. But with the bonds falling on Friday, yields were up 2.8%, as you can see right here. For the most part, the yield is hovering in between 1.7 and 1.5. Now, I want to throw a comparison up for you guys when we just throw a quick study, compare with the NDX, and take a look at technology versus yield. So we can see the Nasdaq topped out and tumbled here, and that's as the yields were rising. But you can see the yields have kind of been consolidating here, kind of breaking down. We saw the Nasdaq consolidate and break up. So with the Nasdaq putting in new all-time highs, and we clearly see yields coming down, what's going to happen in the bonds? If the bonds fall in price, it's going to drive yields higher. Yields rising could potentially push these stocks down, the growth name stocks that are in the Nasdaq. But for the most part, technology names and growth stocks have gotten comfortable with yields up in this level. As you can see, we're putting in new all-time highs. However, the bonds are going to dictate a lot of the move in the coming weeks. Now, when we just take a look at some other indices, we see the Russell on a year-to-date is up 16%. However, it's not putting in an all-time high. When we look at the Dow too is putting in an all-time high. So S&P, Nasdaq, and Dow are all marching higher. On a year-to-date, the Dow is up 13%. So even though the Russell is leading the way, up over 16% on the year, it's not close to putting all-time highs in. And when we take a look at our volatility futures, these are the April contracts. They're rolling this coming week, and they've just been whacked down about 0.25% on Friday. When we just take a look at the VIX is sitting at 16.25. So the VIX is very, very low. And we even look at the VVIX. VVIX got a bit going this week. You got rejected at 110. We look intraday Friday. We got going into lunch, got to 110, and ultimately whacked back down. But for the most part, volatility is back over 100 in the VVIX, sitting at a 107, and it'll be interesting to see how it trades in the coming week. So we see what's happening in our indices, bonds, and volatility. What's going on in our sectors? And we'll start from the top from Friday. We see healthcare led Friday up about 75 basis points, putting in a new all-time high. Healthcare has broken out. On a year to date, it's up 7.5%. Next, we have the financials. They were up 70 basis points. Due to the rising yields, you can see up 2.8%. The financials had a nice day. They were up 0.7%. putting in a new all-time high. On a year-to-date, they are up 21%. So financials are a very strong sector in 2021. Next, we have consumer staples, putting in a new all-time high. On a year-to-date, they're about 4.6%, not as strong as the others. And then we see industrials up about 0.2%, putting in a new all-time high. We see our big five, that's putting in a new all-time high. That consists of Apple. That's kind of slowing down a bit. It got a nice move. Will we see continuation into next week's tape? It'll be interesting to watch this one. We see Microsoft putting in a new all-time high. We even see Google knocking on the door to all-time highs. However, Amazon not quite there, in the same boat as Apple, cooling off a bit. It will look to hit all-time highs coming into next week. We even have Facebook that's pulled a bit from the all-time highs, but within striking distance. Even Tesla, it's not in the big five, but in the same boat as Apple and Amazon. You can see it's ready to make that next leg higher. Ultimately, it's going to come down to the bonds. We see the XLK that was in the red, so we can see that the big five led broader tech in Friday's tape. But for the most part, it put a new all-time high in. And even software stocks kind of have some room to run, largely looking like the Russell 2000, if you ask me, which it will be rebalanced in June, the Russell, because a lot of stocks in there are over 2 billion market cap. We have the XLE that was down about 0.8%, our worst performing sector on the day. On a year to date, it's up 27.5%. Let's move on over and take a look at our dollar index and see what's going on in our commodities. And taking a look at the dollar index, it was down on Friday. So with rising yields, the dollar was continuing to weaken. You can see since about the end of March, it's been on a downturn. The dollar has weakened as the yields have slowed down a bit. When we look at crude oil, it was down about 60 basis points on Friday. It broke out on Wednesday, however, slowing down a bit, just maybe consolidating in this lower 60 level. We'll have to keep our eyes on it, but due to the crude being down, it kind of held back the XLE. And then we have gold. We take a look at gold here. Gold's up 60 basis points, trying to break out, get something going. With the dollar weakening, it's going to continue to slide higher. It's all going to come down to the bonds. They play a key role in this market. And last but not least, we have Bitcoin futures. They're down 2.7%. However, they stopped trading here. Not a great read. So when we pull up my charts over on our Coinbase chart, we have a crossover right here, the end of today at 8 o'clock, which means around this time, within the next 24 hours, I'm expecting some big volatility to come in Bitcoin. We see 59.4 is support on this chart. So if we do roll down, that should place some solid support. However, when we look at the Binance chart, if we do roll more, 57.9 is, again, strong support. But first, we have to break this Coinbase at 59.4. So those are some of our barriers. However, if we break up, 64.3 should place some resistance. Breaking that could get the show on the road. And last but not least, Bitstamp, we're breaking below this pitchfork. You can see at 61.2. The other one's at 59.7-ish. They slowly slope up. But for the most part, if we can kind of hug this area over the weekend, that's going to be a win in my book. But again, I'm expecting some big volatility coming up here in the next 24 hours on the 4-hour. When we look at it on the daily and we go to the Coinbase chart, I look for crossovers. There's one here on April 24th as well as the 18th. So the 4-hour saying the 17th, the daily saying the 18th, as well as the 23rd. I'm expecting some big moves this coming week here in Bitcoin. And if we do fall to the downside, consider adding the dip. There you have it for the stock market breakdown. So with just 55 points of expected move in the SPX, I'm not expecting much to happen next week. When you're making new all-time highs day in and day out, you just can't expect the expected move to be that high. We're just kind of slowly grinding higher. Not much economic data next week, so all eyes will be on what the bond market wants to do. They're on the verge of breaking out. Do they get rejected and roll back over? If so, it should drive yields higher, which ultimately will slow down the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq will play a key component in marching our indices higher, so we're going to need these bonds to get going. Otherwise, resting at these levels is kind of worrisome. But if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. It means a lot when you guys show some support. And if you're watching me for the first time, I do these daily after the bell. Show some love and hit that subscribe button. It will really make my day if you guys can do that. Have any questions or comments? I would love to hear from you guys. Do you guys think the market's topping? How much more room do we have to run? Love to hear what you guys think on the market. But on that note, I will see you on Monday. Have a great night. Take care. Peace!